Hello, my name is Aisha Whitney, and my capstone project is on Do More Women Die Than Men in Hurricanes? How Climate Change Disproportionately Affects Women. So, starting off with my research question, how does climate change affect women's health? Well, throughout my literature review, I found that women especially those in poverty, face higher risk and experience a greater burden of climate change impacts. One example of this, or one example of why this is that women have distinct health needs, such as nutritional demands during pregnancy, which places them at a higher risk of suffering from climate-sensitive diseases. This is only one aspect in many in which women's health are affected. And from there, I got to my theory. Climate change disproportionately affects women's health. As I said earlier, women's health is impacted in a various number of ways, but I chose to focus on one aspect in which during climate-related disasters, women suffer disproportionate mortality and survivors experience decreased life expectancy. So focusing on that first part of the statement, I came up with my hypothesis that as climate change causes climate-related disasters to increase, the mortality rate for women also increases. That brings me to my research design. So I chose hurricanes as my measurement for the climate-related disasters. Gender, male versus female, acted as my independent variable, while mortalities in the hurricanes acted as my dependent variable. I looked at the NOAA's website of National Hurricane Center Tropical Cyclone Reports. The information was available here, but there was no data set created, so I had to go ahead and do that myself. I went through all Atlantic hurricanes from 2000 to 2021 and looked at reports where the US was affected. I then took the reports and counted all mortalities that occurred in the continental US. Some reports had Puerto Rico, but I chose to just keep it to continental US. In the reports, deaths were also separated by indirect and direct. But in my data set, I chose to just put them into one category of total mortalities just to simplify the data set. And in my data set, mortalities were categorized once again by gender, but not all reports fully reported the gender. So I have it split into three categories, male, female, and then unknown or unspecified. Coming off to my data and empirical results. So as I mentioned earlier, there was a lack of gender reporting in some of the reports. In some reports, they would wholly name every single gender of every single mortality, while others, they would only name a few, or they would just leave it out completely. Of the 75 reports that I reviewed, only 34 included gender. And of the total 3,026 mortalities counted, unspecified gender accounted for 2,777 of them. So a large majority. Of the desegregated data between male and female, I was able to find that the mortality rate for men was higher than for women. Male mortalities accounted for 5.8% of deaths, while female mortalities accounted for 2.4%. And then the unknown or unspecified gender category, again, accounted for 91.8% of mortalities. So conclusion and further research. Unfortunately, the lack of desegregated data doesn't allow me to come to a true conclusion. There are limitations in gender data, and I had a very small sampling space, so it's not possible for me to create a conclusive answer. But of the desegregated data, I did find that my hypothesis was not supported. There were more male mortality than female mortalities. One of the reasons why there would be more female mortalities was because women tend to be more homebound, and so they stay at home and look for loved ones and relatives when hurricanes hit. However, men may be at a higher risk of drowning during severe weather, and drownings accounted for a large majority of the mortalities. So that is a reason why that may have occurred. My findings also found that there was a lack in federal standards for gender reporting. As I mentioned earlier, some reports only reported a portion of the gender while others reported fully. This reveals that how unprepared we are in the science world. We have to start disaggregating data in order for us to create solutions for these higher impact or the higher risk groups, such as women, and specifically women in poverty. And we're unable to come up with solutions when it comes to health and climate change if the disaggregated data is not available. And finally, here is my sources cited. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.